George Lucas's stories set in the galaxy far, far away introduced us to the lightsaber, and the way the Jedi Knights treated them as sacred weapons at the core of their philosophy. The bond between a Jedi and their lightsaber comes down to a core component at the center, a Kyber Crystal housed within. But what happens to a Jedi's lightsaber after they die? Throughout canon storytelling, there have been many scenarios where a lightsaber outlives its maker, including this one, which originates more than 400 years before even Episode 1. You see, before the galaxy joined together in the modern Republic of the prequels, Jedi roamed the Outer Rim with Jedi outposts scattered across the galactic frontier. During this time, the Jedi Temple on Coruscant was known to house a great structure known as the Kyber Arch. When a Jedi fell in combat or otherwise became one with the Force, their lightsaber was returned to the temple. The Kyber within was harvested and added to the huge crystalline structure on the lower levels. The Arch itself became a place of remembrance and meditation within the Jedi Temple, and Jedi would take up the challenge of scaling the structure, crossing its narrow peak while channeling the Force. The earliest mention of the Arch comes in 382 BBY, when two Jedi, one named Kevmo Zink and the other Zala Makri's Kyber crystals were added to the Arch. The Kyber Arch was still standing 150 years later, but there's no other reference to it in canon beyond 230 BBY. So it's possible that the tradition of adding crystals of fallen members of the Order faded into history by the time of the prequel trilogy, along with many other Jedi practices coming from the days of the High Republic. But you can still find Yoda beneath the structure in the Minecraft story DLC called Path of the Jedi, which takes place during the Clone Wars. But I don't think this one's a canon entry. That's what used to happen when the Order recovered a Knight's weapon, but what about those lightsabers that aren't recovered by Jedi? Some lightsabers across galactic history have fallen into the hands of non-Jedi after their owner's death, and these non-Force Wielders have chosen to use it as their own personal weapon. Take for example the ruthless leader of the Nile, Marchion Ro, who sat upon the Nile throne as Eye of the Storm in 232 BBY. Ro brandished a yellow-bladed lightsaber which he claimed for his own after he unleashed the Shri Karai, a force-eating abomination on Twi'lek Jedi Master and Legend Loden Greatstorm. Then there was Moff Gideon, who claimed the Darksaber for himself sometime before 9 ABY. He used it to dominate Mandalorian culture after being instrumental in the destruction of Mandalore, where the Darksaber holds religious significance. In fact, the Darksaber has been wielded by more non-Force sensitives than any other saber. In canon, we've seen it used by Pre Vizsla, Bo-Katan, Moff Gideon, Din Djarin, all without relying on Force sensitivity. So it's not uncommon for a non-Force wielder to get their hands on the weapon of a Jedi Knight. But something far worse happens to the weapon of a Jedi when it's taken by a student of the dark side.
You don't know the power of the dark side.
There is a Sith ritual known as bleeding a Kyber Crystal, and it's been a rite of passage for all Sith apprentices. Typically, a Jedi gains their Kyber Crystal from a ritual expedition known as the Gathering, but for a Sith to complete their training, they must take theirs in combat. Once they've successfully claimed a Kyber Crystal from a Jedi victim, a Sith Lord pours darkside energy into it, forcing the living crystal to submit to their might and to acknowledge its new master in the Force. The term bleeding comes from the resulting red glow that emanates from the crystal once it's been dominated by a Dark Lord of the Sith, giving the enemy of the Jedi their signature red blade. Take for example the story of how Darth Vader got his legendary red lightsaber. After betraying the Jedi Order and aiding in the formation of the First Galactic Empire, Darth Vader was sent by his master to hunt down and eradicate any remaining Jedi who might have survived execution as a result of Order 66. Vader tracked down a Jedi named Kirak Infila on the planet El Dolim in 19 BBY. Vader killed the Jedi and harvested his crystal so he could perform the Sith ritual of bleeding, and was confronted with visions about his old life in the process. Bleeding is a final test to see if a Sith apprentice is truly dedicated to the dark path and closing the door on their former life in the light. Another example in canon comes from Kylo Ren, who attempted to bleed his own Jedi Kyber Crystal with underwhelming results. Kylo Ren, formerly Ben Solo, was so conflicted when he attempted the ritual it resulted in a fractured crystal which emitted a distinctive, unstable red blade. But not all lightsabers are harvested or stolen after the death of notable Jedi, and sometimes their feats in life mean their saber becomes a piece of history. Some Jedi weapons are held intact and kept as part of the archives in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. That's originally what happened to the Darksaber, the weapon forged by the first Mandalorian to walk the path of the Jedi. That is until his descendants, members of Clan Vizsla, managed to infiltrate the Jedi Temple's defenses and break into the Jedi Archive vault to liberate their ancestors' weapon. The only other lightsaber we know to have been kept by the Jedi after its wielder's death belonged to Qui-Gon Jinn. That's because Obi-Wan used it to defeat Sith Lord Darth Maul on Naboo. In doing so, he became the first Jedi in more than a millennia to come face to face with their ancient enemy and win. But the Jedi aren't the only ones to keep lightsabers as artifacts. In fact, dark-side acolytes would start their own collections during the fall of the Republic. How about Separatist commander of the droid armies, General Grievous? His disdain for the Jedi led to him killing members of the Order, seemingly for sport.
Your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection.
Or the Empire's Inquisitorius, who would take the weapons of fallen Jedi back to the Fortress Inquisitorius on the moon of Mustafar, where they lined the Jedi Hunter's war room as trophies. Lightsabers that weren't displayed were destroyed by decree of the Emperor following the fall of the Jedi Order. At the Order's height, there were more than 10,000 Jedi serving as peacekeepers across the galaxy. But during the formation of the First Galactic Empire, their numbers fell dramatically. Following the First Empire Day, which celebrated Palpatine's rise to Emperor, there was a ceremony held on Coruscant to mark the eradication of the treasonous Jedi Order. On the steps of the now abandoned Jedi Temple, Amedda fired up a large incinerator full of weapons of Jedi who had died during Order 66. These lightsabers exploded as their crystals superheated and emitted one last blast of plasma before dying out completely. The last example of what happens to Kyber crystals after its master falls includes a second chance to serve the galaxy with the blessing of the ruling Jedi Council. There are times when a lightsaber or the Kyber crystal within are passed down to a new generation of peacekeepers. This was rare but nothing new to Jedi. Hundreds of years before the fall of the Republic, Padawan Enya Keen took her fallen master Char-El Roy's lightsaber after he was killed in the Night of Sorrow on Dalna, a devastating battle which saw the Jedi raid a militant cult. When the Order fell and the Empire had risen, it became increasingly difficult to undertake the Gathering to travel to Ilum and harvest Kyber crystals. During these dark times, there was no council left to consult, so remaining Jedi began to follow their own traditions and continued to pass the weapon of a Jedi to the next generation. This was the case for Luke Skywalker and Anakin's lightsaber. Same for Rey. And that's it. That's what happens to a Jedi's Kyber crystal once their master dies. Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a like using the thumbs up below if you learned something new. Sub to Sublight if you haven't already, and remember that the Force will be with you. Always.